Hello everyone, I am a physical therapist from Turkey. My name is Pınar. After I had worked as a PT for 3 years in Turkey, I came to the US. My intention is to explain that being hijabi doesn't prevent being a successful PT. And I hope this video will encourage and inspire hijabi women. At the same time, I also want to warn you against some problems you may encounter and talk about solutions. I haven't worked in the US yet, so Bana and Nawal will talk about it. I'm gonna start with you, Bana. Could you tell us about yourself?
My name is Bana Odeh. I'm a third-year student at Wayne State University. I was born and raised in the US, but I'm also a citizen of Palestine. So one of the main reasons I pursued PT is to make it accessible to the Muslim community. And because here in the US, it's not diverse at all. We're about 80% white. So this is something that I wanted to do for my community and to really bring the needs of Muslim women specifically into the PT profession.
And Nawal, now let's talk about you.
Hello, my name is Nawal Ashouri. I'm a student physical therapist at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. And I also hope to, like Bana, to be able to help incorporate physical therapy into the Muslim communities, both locally and on a national level.
Let's start with my first question. What difficulties may hijabi women experience while studying physical therapy?
So from my experiences, some difficulties include really standing up for your beliefs, because sometimes it feels like if you don't take a firm stance, then, or if you seem hesitant, then people will almost walk all over you. And one thing that I took with me is something that my dad told me, which is that people respect those who respect themselves. So I really try, and I want to remind Muslim sisters out there that really the way that you carry yourself and your tone and your actions are going to send the message to people that you have something to respect. And never forget that, because you definitely do. And you have a right to your beliefs and a right to be accommodated, so don't ever forget that. A second difficulty is battling stereotypes, and a lot of these, in the US especially, come from being covered. So people might think that you are oppressed or you're weak, and they also seem to think that many hijabis are uneducated. So I've gotten comments before about, from a patient saying, "Oh, well, you went to college. I'm so proud that you broke the cycle," as though nobody else who was a hijabi, who was intelligent or went to college. So I just want everyone to realize that just because people have these views, it doesn't mean that you should let them stop you, but being aware of them can help prepare you for that future battle ahead of you.
My issues with physical therapy school are more personal accountability, making sure that you get your prayers in on time, that you don't feel shy to pray in front of people or to feel shy to ask for a place to pray. It can feel weird because a lot of times, especially if you're in a large, popular area and people are walking by and they don't really know what's happening and they ask you, well, you're in prayer, so you can't just stop your prayer and answer them. And you have to wait until you're done. And by that time they've left because you won't answer them and they think that's a little odd. So that especially, and being very cautious about the rules of hijab. However a person chooses to follow them, that's not the topic of its conversation. But whatever your rules are, stick to them, because it can be very confusing for other people if you are more lenient some days and more strict other days. So stick by your rules of hijab, define those very clearly before you start physical therapy school, if that's still an option, if you have time to decide that still. And just be aware of what you're going to do, especially when we have labs in the US, we have labs that, we have mixed classes with guys and girls, and understand that there are going to be things that you can do on girls and only with girls, but there are other programs and such where it might not be the easiest option to make that work. So be prepared to maybe have to make some exceptions or try to modify where you feel comfortable. I think, like kind of how Bana mentioned about having stereotypes, my issue is that I feel that the stereotypes are everywhere, and that we need to understand that they're not all out to get you, that there are a lot of really nice people out there. Not everyone is the person who will hold something against you or who will treat you poorly. So just be proud of what you do and where you stand and how you are perceived by other people, and always try to just keep improving on what you do, because that shows people how you respect yourself, like Bana was saying.
Let me give an example from my own country. I posted a post on Instagram and asked people to share their experiences. And I'm going to talk about my own experiences and responses that I received to my post. Firstly, I think students don't know their rights. Some professors will pair a woman with a man for practice at some universities. Women are forced to be touched by men for the purpose of practice. It's required by the professors. They threaten students to cut some points from their grades. And there are universities where female students are pressured to be a patient model in class. In my own experience, some instructor asked me to expose some part of my body in front of the male assistant during exam. I said I could expose my body if the male assistant left the room, but my professor didn't accept it. It was very tough experience, and we have to learn to practice to be good physical therapists, but we don't have to be a model as a patient. I think that shouldn't be required. It's not just about wearing a hijab. It's also about universities' responsibility to respect it and proper boundaries. They should provide us with a model. Because non-hijabi female students or even male students may not want to be a model as a patient. It's their right, I think, choose not to be a model. What do you think? Does being a hijabi physical therapist make it difficult to be a successful PT?
With this one, I don't think that it affects our ability to be successful at all, and it doesn't interfere with our learning, even though we might have to make certain accommodations. And I think that we actually bring advantages to the table. And I'm bringing to you something that my friend who is a physician shared with me, is that we're in a special place because, well, here in the US, there's not as many female PTs who are Muslim. So we're never going to have people who don't want to be our patients from the Muslim community. There's always going to be people, inshallah, who are searching for Muslim females especially, so that they feel more comfortable. So this is a strength for us, and we bring this wherever we work. So this is actually something that will bring not only ourselves success, but success for whatever company we're with. So if anything, it's an advantage.
Nawal?
No, I don't think that being a hijabi physical therapist makes it hard at all. I think, if nothing else, it provides new challenges of how to work with patients. It invites a lot of conversation because it's a topic starter. I mean, it's a conversation starter. It really is. People ask, do you get hot in that? Do you shower? Like all those questions. So I think it's really interesting how it can bring a whole new level of love and respect between you and your patient. And then also a whole different type of respect for your own hijab as like on your personal journey through, I don't know what I just did there. Sorry. It also helps you like develop a new relationship with your own hijab of one of respect and love for it.
I agree with you. I also want to ask the following. What kind of reaction did you get when you requested your religious accommodations?
So first of all, for me, I requested two things. Before I get into the reactions, I requested to not have any of the men in my class touch me. And I requested to have a privacy screen or some sort of curtain so that if I was working with females, I could be covered from the rest of the class. So I was pretty impressed with their reaction, and they were very nice about things. My program director came to my class and she explained to the students around me, and this was on the first day of class. So she explained how this was such an opportunity for the other students around me, because people might have a Muslim patient and they need to know how to approach her appropriately. And having experience with me would really help prepare them in ways that other students were not prepared. So that was like a very positive note, and it made me feel really good going into my classes. We did have some problems though along the way in terms of individual professors at some point, and they didn't quite understand some things. So for example, when my screen came in, I'm I'm a little bit over 5 feet tall, and the screen was 5 feet tall, and the bottom had like a gap maybe like this. So I told them, this is going to expose my legs. There's students who are much taller than me. They're just going to see right through it or right over it. So we had to return that one and order a new one. But they were very nice throughout the whole thing. And my only negative experience with a professor was somebody gave me a hard time about changing. We had a pool therapy day where we were supposed to get into a pool and practice some of the exercises we would do with patients. And I requested to have it with all women. And, at first she was making it seem like it was too difficult to accommodate. But alhamdulillah, I was able to go to the director and get that fixed. So the director took my side and she was very nice about it.
Thank you. And Nawal, it's your turn.
So the first thing that I asked for, and it was the very first day of orientation, the very first week, I went to the program director, who she's now retired, but there's someone else who's taken her place. Also amazing though. She asked, I asked her, where can I go to find maybe a small closet or somewhere that I can pray that would be quiet, that's kind of private. And she said, I'm not sure, but let's go find out. And she took me to this office right down the hall and introduced me to, I don't remember the name or what her title was or what exactly she did, but somehow she booked out a room for the rest of the semester and every semester since for prayer. And it's in a location that Muslim students from the School of Dentistry, from the School of Optometry, and other schools in the area, they can come to that room and pray there too. And it's something that I just did not expect. And I love that so much because I'm that kind of person. I have a hard time when it comes to prayer in public. I get very, very timid. And so I was very shocked to have that wonderful experience. See, I didn't have the screen problem with that Bana had. We actually have a lot of curtains in our PT lab. So it was absolutely phenomenal. My entire class, I got to kind of make a little announcement and discuss with them like kind of the rules of it and what we would do when it comes to the orthopedics course, the palpation and everything. So they're all super understanding. I don't recall any issues that I've had where someone's trying to work on me and I've refused or anything like that. But yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. It will meet my needs for acceptance. I'm wondering that the reactions of your colleagues and professors, did they judge you?
Sorry, so for me, the professors some of them were absolutely amazing, and others, I don't know, I kind of got the view that I got the impression that they kind of just tolerated the differences. For me, the problem was never really with the professors, it was with my classmates. So the men were very respectful and they kept their distance, but for some of the girls, they made it sort of seem like they didn't want to work on me because it was too hard. So for me, and this kind of goes back to the first question, I really prefer to stay covered even as much as I can, even with the women. So a lot of the times I'll just wear something very thin and the professors are fine if people just work on top of the clothes. So that for me, it helps me feel more comfortable. I don't have to expose myself. But for some of the girls, they would kind of make it seem that this wasn't very convenient for them, even though it would help them later with their patients. So to give you an example, before our exam one time, a few girls had never practiced orthopedics on me, any techniques. And then they came by, they found out they had me for the exam as a patient. So they came by and were asking me, how do I talk to you about your hijab? How do I talk to you about covering yourself? Like, do I ask you to expose yourself? Do I not ask you? They just were asking me because they didn't want to lose points. And they said that. So these types of interactions really upset me because I knew that they weren't going to do well with a Muslim patient one day. And, that's the community, as I said, that I'm very concerned about and that I went into PT to help. But those were just some instances. I've had some students who, and I'm kind of giving the scary stories to an extent. So I had a male student one time who I didn't know who he was. I just knew he was a PT student who was 1 year above me, who kind of like almost cornered me a little in the hallway, like pushed me a little bit against the wall as he was walking. And he said, God bless America, in not a nice way. And So those situations don't make you feel so comfortable, but they don't always happen. And there are definitely people out there who are very, very kind. They're always willing to take your side. So for me, some examples that were really good for me and that they showed me a lot of hope in PT as a profession were, for example, my first day of lab, before I ever had a privacy screen or a curtain, I thought that I had one. So I came in with layers and I was ready to, take off the layers if I needed. And it turns out there was no screen that day, privacy screen. So I apologized to my partner. I said, I had no idea. I'm so sorry I have so many layers. And she said, no, this is amazing for me. I'm going to learn so much from you. And I'm going to be able to help so many more of my patients in a much better way. So there are definitely great examples out there.
I have had just wonderful reactions from my professors. Most everyone has been really great about it. If I ever need any sort of accommodation, if I ever tell them, hey, I'm uncomfortable with this, or if I say here's the rule, I don't really know if there's a way to make this a little easier for me. But my classmates alike have just been absolutely phenomenal. There are particular people in my mind that I think of right away that they say no worries, it's not a problem at all, just don't even worry about it. And we're much more lenient when it comes to palpating or something through the clothes, and like Bana said, we'll wear things that are really thin, so that makes it a lot easier for the other person. But right now, after we return back to labs with the COVID situation, being very careful, of course, we're in a lab that has no privacy screen, so everything is going to happen through the clothes, so I've been very grateful that everyone has had a wonderful, wonderful reaction to me. And if anyone has disliked it, they've never been honest about it and told me. Maybe they told somebody else, but they didn't tell me.
Well, what kind of reactions do you encounter in hospitals and clinics? I know it's hard to believe that, but both in my experience and in the comments from Instagram, hijabi PTs aren't allowed to work in Turkey in some hospitals and clinics because employers think that the hijab represents religion and there shouldn't be such symbols in the workplace. They think that some patients don't like these symbols like hijab, and the religion of PTs shouldn't be visible.
First of all, I'm going to just share some comments on that before I give you my own experiences. So I think that when an organization responds in that way towards Muslim women, that doesn't say anything about the Muslim women, but it says a lot about the organization. So to those places, I would ask, does a hijab interfere with the quality of care? And say that somebody, and a lot of the times these are discriminatory against Muslims, but not other groups. So my question is, if somebody came to an interview wearing a necklace that had a cross on it, would you really say the same thing to them, that they couldn't work if they were wearing that cross? And I think in a lot of situations, and of course I could be wrong, the cross wouldn't get as much attention as the hijab would. So I think that organizations are harming themselves, so those hospital systems are really harming themselves by telling people that it's okay to discriminate based on religion. Because this isn't just a message that the Muslim female will get with a hijab. It's going to be something that will, it teaches your patients and it teaches everyone in that organization that it's okay to not want to be with someone or not want to work with someone because of their religion. And that's not okay for anyone. So I think for those types of places, they really just need better leadership. And that's actually a challenge for us as hijabis in PT and in any other field to step up and take over those leadership roles and take on those challenges in order to make the organizations better for everyone who comes after. So in terms of the US, for me, my experiences have been great so far in clinics and in hospitals. If I ask for a place to pray, I'll usually get one, even if it's just a quiet corner in a clinic. And if I'm ever in hospitals, they already have areas to pray, and because they tend to be more diverse. So in hospital settings, I've realized there are more hijabis than in PT clinics, so it makes me more comfortable there. But so I haven't really had any problems.
It's your turn, Nawal.
Okay. I had one negative experience that really stands out, and then one just kind of funny experience that I enjoyed. The negative one, we'll start off with that first. there was a person who was not a patient, who was not in a very good situation in life, I guess. Didn't seem like a happy person in general, but when she thought that I was out of earshot, I heard her say to people who were my coworkers at the time and people who were also like fellow, there are other patients there. And she saw my hijab, she saw me walk past, and then I went into a room and she thought she couldn't hear me, or I couldn't hear her. And she said, "Man, if I had to wear that, I would kill myself." And hearing that, I didn't cry then. It makes me want to cry now. But hearing that just made me feel so, so distant. And that wasn't the big problem. The problem was that none of my coworkers said anything. Or if they said something, I didn't hear it. So I never brought up the situation again. But it just made me felt so, so distant. It made me feel very distant. And that was really hard to overcome, because I didn't know if those coworkers were people who would support me if something else were to happen that would be something said to my face or something more offensive. A fun experience I had one time is that this one patient told me that she appreciated that I wore the hijab because she doesn't like when people's hair is in their face. So I like that. It was jolly.
It's funny. Do you think being a hijabi woman contributes to any hesitation in your patients?
I think that sometimes it can, especially if you have a patient who's never interacted with a Muslim before. So you might get people who will take what they learn on the news and try to apply it to you. So I've had a patient one time, and it's important to note that this doesn't happen very often. If they have thoughts, usually they'll keep it to themselves. But I've had a patient one time who saw that I was Muslim and I was Palestinian. So one of the two kind of set her off, and she asked me if I could explain terrorism to her. So that was a shock. I responded well to it, but that was a shock. And it adds some stress, because if you feel like you're getting a lot of judgment, it makes you more stressed in terms of, the pressures to perform very well. So sometimes for patients who haven't ever encountered a Muslim before, they might come in with some preconceived notions and not treat you very well. And so you might get some weird comments or weird questions. Like I've had a patient ask me if I could explain terrorism. And this can be stressful, because if you feel that if you don't perform well, then you're going to be judged even more harshly, because you are almost a representative for your entire religion. But this doesn't happen too often. And I typically get a different response, which is where people are just very curious. So they'll ask me a lot of questions and they'll be very respectful. So they'll learn a lot about me and a lot about Islam. And then we also really bond along the way. So I think in the big picture, the good outweighs the bad.
Thank you. And Nawal, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is there a prayer room in your university and clinics?
So I've never seen one in a clinic. I've seen them in hospitals before, where they have a reflection room for any religion. In my undergraduate university, which is the same one, they just have two different campuses, we had a prayer room and a wudu room. But currently we just have something called a reflection room, which is where people can come in and they can, Muslims can pray. If you want to do yoga or meditate there, you can do that as well. So I guess that's like our prayer room.
Nawal, it's your turn.
So there's that one room that I talked to the program director in my first year about getting, and I believe that's still been upheld. I'm not sure how things will change after the COVID-19 thing or whenever that changes. But we don't have one in the building, but I'm on the same campus that I went to for the undergraduates, my undergrad degree. And there is a particular library that has what they call a multi-faith purpose room, but it was made like with the purpose of like Muslim prayer. So it's carpeted, it's always kept very clean. It has like wudu stations for the guys and for the girls. It's really nice, but it tends to be too long of a walk to be able to get out during one break of class to get there and pray and everything and come back. It might take about 15 minutes to get there, and then 10, 15 minutes to pray, and then 15 minutes to get back. So it can take a bit of time. in clinics and hospitals, you might find something that's called a chapel for reflection or for prayer or meditation, but a lot of chapels that I've seen they're not appropriate for Muslim prayer. Like, they have pews or like the different kinds of seats people sit in, or they have pictures or something like that to us is almost like a type of idol, if you will, that it can't be present in the room. We can't have pictures of people and etc. in the room present when we pray. Also, the carpet is nice to have under your knees.
Thank you. Let's move on to solutions. What can we do for potential problems we may experience during physical therapy education?
So I have a lot to say here. I think number one would be to find allies in your colleagues and your professors and employers. So for every person who may not treat you very well, you're going to find way more who are willing to help you. So you want to form meaningful connections with those people. And I'll give you an example from my own situation. So in school, there were times when I was, from the classmates or from other treatment where I wasn't feeling very respected and I didn't feel like I really belonged in PT. So it was in those moments that I got more encouraged to start writing and to start using my voice more. So I wrote an article for a national blog in physical therapy about how to treat Muslim patients and giving some guidelines. So I realized after that when you get discriminated against, that you should speak louder and not softer. And I realized from those experiences that I got a lot more positive attention and I made a lot more connections that gave me more power and more influence through speaking up. So remember that if there's, if one professor is giving you a hard time, or if it's your boss, or it's at just a clinical rotation, that there's a bigger picture out there, and don't ever forget to contribute to it, because that really, really helps you along the way. And in terms of, so that would be in addressing problems that currently exist. But a big part of it, in especially healthcare, we look at preventing problems. So I think a huge part of preventing the problem is recruiting more hijabis in PT. The more of us there are, the more our voice becomes something that's heard. And I also think that we need to promote policies that protect against discrimination. And this is at every level. So the universities, the clinics, the hospitals, because when somebody treats you in a certain way, and if they're, aggressive or they show some discrimination, then this shouldn't be something that can just be brushed aside. It should be something that's addressed. And so every institution needs to think about that. I also think we should improve diversity education, because I've realized through, unfortunately, sitting through too many kind of bad diversity talks, that people don't know too much about Muslims. They don't know too much about different cultures. And we need to promote kind of accurate information. And part of that happens from people like us speaking up and speaking out about what we're experiencing and what our beliefs are. And lastly, I just wanted to say to anyone who's out there who's a PT and a hijabi or is thinking about it, is really use your voice and pursue leadership positions, because this is what's going to change the profession, not just for you, but for every single person after you. And it's going to, when you're in a spot of power, you're able to change and to steer the wheel in the direction that is beneficial to you and to other communities. So really, be strong and continue forward.
Always, I agree 100% with what Bana said. Absolutely 100%. I think one thing that I personally want to try to improve is reaching out to the Muslim communities and to also the physical therapist side of things who don't really know much about the Muslim community. Kind of like how Bana did with her article. I'd like to be able to talk to physical therapists and people on the local level, and provide a way for them to reach out to patients who don't know that physical therapy is an option, or that think it's going to be too much stress for them to do it, especially with hijab. I think something that was really amazing is that I'm doing a pelvic health certification, and something that they have provided that could be a wonderful solution for like a Muslim woman who's not comfortable being a patient model, especially for a pelvic health lab, is you can bring a person with you and use them as your model. So especially for Muslim men who would potentially be going to pursue this, to be able to help other men with this, they could bring like their wife or something like that. So they have provided a wonderful solution for a very uncomfortable problem to discuss.
I attended a course in Houston last year. They gave us a form at the beginning of the course, ask about our preference for being a model. I marked that I don't want to be a model, and the class paired off, and instructor became my partner. I practiced on her. These may apply in Turkey, so the instructor should be responsible for finding a patient. All right, how should we act against injustice or judgment at any time?
As Muslims, our duty is to stand with the oppressed. So if there's any type of injustice or judgment, we have to learn about it and acknowledge it and help change the systems that promote it. And from my own experiences, there are times to talk through things calmly and to assert yourself, or to take action. So part of this is knowing the people around you. So, looking at what they value and how they respond to conflict can really help you frame your own approach so that when you are addressing an injustice, you can approach it in a way that's the most effective. Another piece of advice, again, goes back to preventing problems rather than looking at them and addressing them after they've happened. So for hijabis as a whole, I think a huge part of preventing the injustice and discrimination is being in a place that actually is very inclusive and values your differences. I've realized through the clinical rotations I've done that you can tell a lot about a clinic based on just asking them, if when I work here or when I start here, where can I pray? So a lot of people will not expect this question and they'll just have an instant reaction. So you can kind of tell if somebody shows, if they just think it's odd, if they immediately accept it, or if they're kind of, giving you a look or judging you. So it gives you some sort of idea of what the workplace environment might be like for you. And I would also encourage people to ask questions about the diversity climate of the place that you want to work at or the place you're going to go to school at, because it helps you kind of avoid those injustices and, be in the best environment for you.
Thank you. And Nawal, what would you like to say?
As far as injustice, whether it's towards you or to other people, just try your very best to educate yourself. So that can be in the sense of educating yourself if you think you might be passively being unjust to somebody, or in the case that someone is being unjust to you, educate yourself on the place, especially when it comes to rotations, where you might be, and that type of environment, similar to what Bana was saying, because you can tell a lot about the people if you know a little bit about their environment. So if it's like a larger city, for example, and there are people, let's take New York as a big example. People are traveling internationally all the time. It's not uncommon to see Muslims. Some places here in the South, it is extremely, extremely uncommon to see Muslims. And there are places you just want to avoid. It's not safe for you to go. And knowing that ahead of time is really important. But also just recognize that you can also be the person having a snap judgment when you hear something or you see somebody. So always ask yourself, be very familiar with asking yourself, why do I have that judgment? Where did that thought come from? Why do I think like this? I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying just ask yourself and make sure it's a judgment that you want to be able to have. Additionally, be aware that the moments where it gets the easiest to be mad are the ones in which you must be very specific about being calm and listening to the other person. It is very, very easy to pour gas onto a fire if you're not being careful, especially when people are upset. And when do we get upset? Most often when we feel attacked or offended and someone is judging us, usually. So I think it's really important from the personal standpoint, know where you're going to be, try your very best. We have the world at our fingertips now with our phones and our internet and everything. And there's a very small shortage of information. No matter where you go, you're going to find information about something. There's always someone to ask. So don't be foolish and not know where you're going. Try to do your very best and make sure that you're not the person being unjust to somebody else. Don't think you're higher or better than other people in any way, because you never know.
So I wanted to just add that when it comes to, in a sense, avoiding the conflict that goes with it, I do not mean that in terms of, if there's injustice to somebody else. I just figured I would clarify. I mean that more in the sense of we know that there are going to be situations where people are resistant to change. So for us, and in terms of thinking about our own safety, and sometimes you really may feel if you know, the location is really that bad that you may feel unsafe in certain spots. So for us, you know, asking those questions and avoiding the conflict in that sense is very important. But in terms of other sorts of problems where there's injustice towards other people, or even if you're the one who may be part of the problem, you know, those things should be addressed head on and not avoided.
Thank you. Here is the last question. What are your recommendations for those who wear hijab and want to be a PT?
So I would recommend consulting with someone who's done it before, and my door is always open. We can add my email to the bottom, to the description of the video if you guys want. I'm honestly open to helping out anybody who's a hijabi and wants some help or some advice in PT, wherever they may be. That's really the reason why, like I said, I pursued PT. It's the reason why I wrote the article. I want to be here as somebody who helps. I also think that when you're going forward with pursuing PT and say that you want to approach a university or a clinic, this is something similar to what Nawal said. I think that you really need to write down your priorities and your goals. So keep in mind what you want to accomplish through a conversation, and writing that down will help you really know what you want and what your goals are in terms of, you know, when you finish the conversation. So for me, for example, that's what I did in terms of my demands from the program in terms of accommodations. So you really know what the things you don't want to compromise and what things you could. Another thing is based off of what Pinar had said in terms of knowing your rights in the classroom and the clinic. No one is allowed to discriminate against you because of your religion, and that should be something that you do not, you know, compromise with. So I recommend going in, you know, with a kind and gracious tone when you're starting out to ask for an accommodation, but really be ready to assert yourself if you need to, because your religion is your right and it's something precious. So no one should be allowed or should feel free really to step all over that, and you need to be ready to stand up for yourself. And again, you can reach out to people like myself or others who have gone through it to get some advice on maybe what the best approach is and how to deal with individuals if they're resistant to helping you out.
From experience, 100%, do not let physical therapy school become your entire life. I think it's really important to understand that physical therapy school is amazing and it's a lot of fun and it goes by very fast. And it's not entirely hard. It's when you try to balance physical therapy school with everything else that it becomes very, very difficult and can really challenge people. So remember this, if you're a hijabi Muslim physical therapist or student in the making or student to be, you are human first. Get your sleep, eat right, spend time with your family or friends or people who help you de-stress, okay? You are Muslim second, okay? Make sure you get your prayers down. Don't feel too timid or too shy or embarrassed, flat downright embarrassed. Don't feel embarrassed to pray, especially in public. And if you have a problem with it and you know it's an issue that you need to address, start that right now. Start finding places that are going to be easy for you to pray in, okay? And you're a PT student third, so don't neglect that as well. But make sure you understand where it is on that priority list. Because if you can't take care of yourself as a human and you can't take care of yourself religiously, if it's something that affects you to that degree, you're not going to be a successful physical therapy student because everything else will be in an imbalance. And so just understand that PT school can swallow you whole if you let it. So try to maintain that balance, whether you need a counselor, whether you need, and that's a counselor in terms of mental health or a therapist, psychiatrist or somebody, whether you need to join a workout class on the weekends, whether you need to be hiking every couple of days, whether you need a cat, whatever the case is, make sure you take care of those priorities and understand that physical therapy school is 3, maybe 4 years of your time in life. And inshallah, it's only a very small part of the lifetime, and that you're going to have experiences that help you grow during that time. So take care of yourself during that time.
Thank you. When it comes to Turkey, dear students in physical therapy, be aware of your rights and know that you will not have rights unless you use your voice. Tell your priorities to professors and friends on the very first day. Don't hesitate to ask for help and support. If you are planning to study at a private university, like me, before your decision, talk to authorities and state your needs. Confirm that your needs will be respected and protected. And Bana and Nawal, thank you. I appreciate your contributions. Thank you for being here and sharing your experiences generously. And thank you.
You're welcome. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for asking us.
Well, see you in another video.